Eleanor Gray hurried along the narrow brick path leading to her parents' house, her breath visible in the chilly autumn air. The gift she carried was wrapped in gold paper, but the corners were slightly creased from her tight grip. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the tall maple trees, scattering crimson leaves across the ground. She was late, 30 minutes late. To be exact, Walter and Martha Gray's 45th wedding anniversary party had already begun, and she could imagine the familiar disapproving looks waiting inside. When she reached the large white colonial house, laughter and clinking glasses floated through the air, music, chatter, and the faint scent of roasted lamb spilled out from the half-open windows. Eleanor steadied her breath, brushed her hair back, and rang the doorbell. Martha opened the door a few moments later, her smile freezing the instant she saw her eldest daughter. "Oh," she said flatly, "you finally decided to join us." "Sorry, Mom. The main road was closed because of construction." Martha looked at her watch and sighed, the sound sharp and deliberate. Always an excuse. "Eleanor, everyone's already at the table." She turned her back before Eleanor could respond. "Hang your coat, and don't make a scene." Eleanor stepped inside, hanging her coat neatly in the hall closet. She adjusted the ribbon on her small package, the warmth of the house pressing against the cold sting of her embarrassment. When she entered the living room, the party was in full swing. Family friends crowded the elegant space, glasses of champagne in hand, chatting animatedly beneath the glittering chandelier. The grand fireplace glowed warmly, its mantel adorned with framed photos of Walter, Martha, and, of course, Brittany. "Big sister." Brittany's familiar voice rang out. She glided across the room, a vision in her designer dress, her diamond earrings catching the light. "I told everyone you'd show up late," I said. "That's just Eleanor, always too busy with work." Her words drew a few polite laughs from nearby guests. Eleanor forced a smile, choosing silence over confrontation. She approached her parents, who stood near the fireplace, surrounded by relatives. "Happy anniversary, Mom, Dad." Walter, tall and dignified with graying hair, didn't meet her eyes. He gave a stiff nod. "Brittany gave us a baccarat vase," he said, gesturing toward a crystal masterpiece filled with roses. "It's exquisite, isn't it?" Eleanor glanced at the vase, her fingers tightening on her modestly wrapped gift. Martha unwrapped the package and pulled out a soft, hand-knitted shawl. Her expression instantly soured. "Oh, Eleanor, this pattern makes me look like an old lady." "I thought you'd like the color," Eleanor said softly. "I don't need this," Martha muttered, tossing it aside onto the sofa. "Brittany, dear, your friend's waiting for you." The mother and daughter walked away arm in arm, leaving Eleanor standing alone among strangers. Moments later, the photographer called. "Family photo, please." The Grays in front of the fireplace. As everyone gathered, Walter turned to Eleanor. "Stand on the side, will you? You're blocking the light." Brittany was taller, but Eleanor quietly obeyed. The flash went off. She wasn't sure if she was even visible in the frame. Then Walter raised his glass. "Before dinner, I have an announcement. Our daughter Brittany has been promoted to vice president at Northeastern Marketing." The room erupted in applause. Martha beamed, pride radiating from her face. Brittany laughed, leaning into her father's embrace. Eleanor clapped politely. Just last week, she'd been made a partner at her firm, Austin Accounting Partners. When she'd told her father, he'd simply replied, "That's nice." As the evening went on, Eleanor retreated to a quiet corner, sipping her wine and watching the glittering scene. Her eyes fell on the forgotten shawl, draped lifelessly on the sofa. She felt the old ache return, the same ache that had followed her since childhood. The small Christmas presents, the missed recitals, the endless comparisons. She had always been the shadow behind Brittany's spotlight. Without saying goodbye, Eleanor quietly slipped on her coat and left. Days later, in her office overlooking downtown Boston, Eleanor reviewed a stack of financial reports. Her boss, Barbara Cohen, entered with a broad smile. "The Williams Group audit, perfect. You've outdone yourself again, Eleanor." "Thank you," Eleanor said. "It was a team effort." Barbara laughed. "You always say that. Your family must be so proud." Eleanor smiled faintly. "They haven't said much." Barbara's smile faded slightly. She changed the subject. Take the weekend off. You've earned it. That weekend, Eleanor received a group text from Brittany. We're having our engagement party next month. Only family and close friends. Moments later, another message arrived with a photo, her parents, Brittany, and Brittany's fiancé, Mark, posing under a banner that read, Family Photo. Eleanor stared at the picture for a long time. Then came another message. Can you come, Eleanor? There's someone I'd like you to meet. She typed, I'll be there, and set her phone down. The day of the engagement party arrived. The house was filled with laughter and music once again. Eleanor wore a soft blue dress and carried a framed photo of herself and Brittany as children. At the door, a waiter stopped her. Your name, please? Eleanor Gray. I'm the bride's sister. He scanned the list. General guests are seated to the right. Eleanor frowned. General guests? Yes, the family section is reserved for VIPs. The words hit harder than she expected. She nodded politely and went where she was told. From across the room, she could see her parents and Brittany laughing in the VIP area. Her name wasn't even called during the toast. Months later, Eleanor's grandmother, Ethel Gray, passed away. The only person who had ever defended her was gone. At the funeral, Eleanor sat beside her parents, who spoke only to each other. When mourners came to pay respects, they greeted Brittany as Ethel's beautiful granddaughter. No one noticed Eleanor standing there in silence. A week later, her phone rang. Ms. Gray, said a man's voice. This is Harold Kent, your grandmother's lawyer. She left a will, specifically naming you. I need to discuss it with you privately. Eleanor blinked. I was told she didn't leave anything. That's not accurate. Please come by my office as soon as you can. 2 weeks later, Eleanor sat across from Mr. Kent in his oak-paneled office. He placed a thick red envelope on the desk. This, he said, contains documents that your grandmother kept for decades. She wanted you to have them when she passed. Eleanor opened the envelope carefully. Inside were old photos, legal contracts, and handwritten notes. As she began to read, her hands started to tremble. It took her hours to understand the full picture. By the time she left the office, the city lights had come on. Snow began to fall softly around her. She stood on the sidewalk, gripping the red envelope to her chest. Everything she had ever suspected, every uneasy feeling she'd pushed aside, was true. On Christmas morning, the Gray mansion glowed with golden light. The living room smelled of pine and cinnamon. Beneath the massive Christmas tree were dozens of lavishly wrapped gifts. Eleanor stood by the doorway, a small red envelope in her handbag. Good morning, Eleanor, Martha said, holding her coffee cup. Her tone was cool. You finally came. Good morning, Mom. Walter was seated in his leather armchair, reading the newspaper. He didn't look up. Brittany and Mark entered next, bright and cheerful, wrapped in matching silk pajamas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Martha clapped her hands. Let's open the presents. They started with Walter, a gold watch from Brittany, a golf club set from Martha, laughter, delight. Then Martha opened a Hermes scarf from Brittany, and diamond earrings from Walter. When it was Brittany's turn, she unwrapped luxury spa invitations and a diamond necklace. Oh, Mark, it's beautiful. The room was filled with joy. Finally, Martha reached under the tree. Eleanor, this one's for you, from all of us. It was a small, elegantly wrapped box. Eleanor opened it slowly. Inside, nothing, just air. Brittany giggled first. We didn't know what to get you. Martha joined in. There's nothing to give a child like you. Walter smirked behind his newspaper. Eleanor placed the empty box on her lap. Something in her heart went very still. Actually, she said quietly, I have something for you, too. She reached into her bag and pulled out the red envelope. Quietly, she said, Merry Christmas. Her voice trembled slightly as the words left her lips, almost lost amid the soft crackle of the fireplace. The living room smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon, her mother's favorite seasonal scent. But for Eleanor, it only reminded her of years spent trying to belong to a family that never seemed to see her. Walter was sitting on his favorite dark leather sofa, his legs crossed neatly, the morning newspaper spread open in his hands. He didn't even look up when she entered. The firelight flickered against his glasses, hiding his eyes. He simply muttered, "Merry Christmas," in a flat tone, as if the words were a formality rather than a greeting. The fireplace glowed warmly, but the air between them remained cold. Moments later, a loud, cheerful voice filled the room. "Eleanor, Merry Christmas." Brittany swept in gracefully, her silk pajamas the color of champagne, her face glowing with fresh makeup, and her golden hair curled to perfection. Beside her was Mark, handsome, confident, and already holding 2 glasses of champagne as if he'd rehearsed the entrance. "Merry Christmas, everyone," Brittany beamed, looping her arm through Mark's. "I just love how perfect everything looks this year. Mom, the decorations are stunning." Eleanor sat down quietly at the far end of the sofa. She could feel the faint sting of the perfume Brittany wore. It was the same brand their mother always used, expensive and overpowering. The scent filled the room, making Eleanor feel smaller, like she didn't belong in the world they had built together. "Now then," Martha said brightly, clapping her hands, "let's open the presents. Walter first." The ritual began. Walter unwrapped a sleek black box containing an expensive watch, engraved, imported, gleaming like a trophy. He smiled proudly at Brittany and said, "This is exquisite. Only the best for you, Dad," Brittany said sweetly, resting her head against Mark's shoulder. Martha squealed when she opened hers, a silk Hermes scarf in a limited edition design. "Oh, Brittany, you always know what suits me," she said, holding it up for everyone to admire. "And these diamond earrings are perfect," she added, turning to Walter with a smile of practiced affection. Eleanor watched the scene quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She had brought no luxurious brands, no gleaming jewels, only a quiet hope that perhaps, this time, she would be seen. When it was Brittany's turn, the attention doubled. She opened spa invitations from her parents, then unwrapped a small jewelry box from Mark. Inside was a necklace with a large, clear diamond that sparkled under the chandelier's light. "It's beautiful," Brittany exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Cameras flashed, laughter rang out, and the living room filled with the sounds of celebration. Then, finally, it was Eleanor's turn. Martha reached under the tree and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. "This one is for you, dear," she said with a strange, measured smile. "It's from all of us." Eleanor's heart gave a small leap of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. She untied the ribbon carefully, feeling the weight of years in that single moment. The paper fell away. She lifted the lid. The box was empty. Her breath caught in her throat. For a long, stunned moment, she stared at it, waiting for someone to explain, for laughter, for a, "just kidding." But there was only silence until Brittany giggled. "We have nothing to give you," she said mockingly. "What were you expecting?" Martha chuckled softly. "There's really nothing to give a child like you, Eleanor. You already have, well, whatever it is you want, don't you?" Walter didn't even look up from his newspaper, but a faint, smug smile crept across his face. Eleanor set the box on her lap. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her expression didn't change. For a moment, the room seemed to fade, the laughter, the light, the warmth, all distant. In their place came clarity. She had spent her whole life chasing love that was never freely given, but now, she finally understood. "Actually," Eleanor said, her voice calm and steady, "I have a gift for you too." She reached into her handbag and took out a red envelope. Its color stood out sharply against the white and gold of the Christmas decor. She placed it gently beneath the tree. Everyone went quiet. Even Brittany stopped smiling. "What is that?" Brittany asked, frowning. "Why don't you open it and see?" Eleanor said, her tone light but resolute. Martha hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. "Walter, you open it." Walter sighed in irritation, folded his newspaper, and took the envelope. "You always have a flair for drama, don't you, Eleanor?" But the moment he slid the papers out, his expression changed. His eyes darted rapidly across the page, and then, as he turned to the next, his face drained of color. His hands began to shake. Where did you get these?" he stammered. Eleanor said nothing. In a sudden burst of fury, Walter stood up and struck her across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the room. The world seemed to stop. Martha gasped. Brittany screamed. The fire flickered violently as if startled by the noise. Eleanor didn't move. She simply looked at him, her cheek red, her eyes calm, almost pitying. Brittany rushed forward. Dad, what are you doing? Martha clutched Walter's arm. Walter, stop. What is this? Martha demanded, turning to Eleanor. What does this mean? It means, Eleanor said quietly, that you can't hide the truth anymore. Brittany picked up the papers that had fallen. Her eyes widened as she scanned them. Photos, contracts, signatures, a younger man and woman smiling beside a child. Dad, who are these people? Walter's voice cracked. Put those down. But Martha's face had already gone pale. Her lips trembled as she whispered, we never wanted her to know. Everyone would have been happier that way. Happy? Eleanor's voice rose, calm, yet filled with fury. Years in the making. You lied to me my entire life. You took everything that belonged to me. You used me. And you call that happiness? Walter's composure broke. You have no proof those documents are real. They were given to me by grandmother, Eleanor said. She knew the truth, and she made sure I would too. The color drained further from Walter's face. She found the adoption papers, the falsified transfer documents, the forged signatures, all of it. She had them verified. And now, so have I. Grandmother? Brittany whispered, her eyes filling with tears. She knew? Yes, Eleanor said softly. She tried to protect me in her own way. She left everything to me when she died, including the truth. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the fireplace seemed to quiet down. Eleanor rose, her cheek still stinging but her posture tall. I'm leaving now. I'll let my lawyer handle the rest. As she walked toward the door, she paused once. Looking back, Martha had sunk into the armchair, sobbing quietly. Walter stood frozen, his authority shattered. Brittany was kneeling on the carpet, clutching the scattered papers with trembling hands. Eleanor stepped outside into the snow. The cold air struck her face, and for the first time in her life, it felt freeing. A week later, in a quiet hotel overlooking Boston, Eleanor watched snow falling outside her window. Dozens of missed calls blinked on her phone screen, but she didn't answer any of them. Each call represented a voice from the past she was finally leaving behind. A soft knock echoed through the room. Who is it? She asked. It's me, Brittany. Eleanor hesitated, then opened the door. Her sister stood there, her face bare of makeup, her eyes swollen and red. The confident woman from before was gone. May I come in? Eleanor stepped aside silently. They sat facing each other by the window. Neither spoke at first. The hum of the city below filled the silence. Is everything in those papers true? Brittany finally asked, her voice breaking. Yes, Eleanor said quietly. Every word. The DNA test confirms it. So you're not my sister, Brittany murmured, tears sliding down her cheeks. You're my cousin, Dad's brother's daughter. Yes, Jonathan Gray's daughter. Brittany covered her mouth. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I believe you, Eleanor said softly. You were a child, just like me. You only saw what they wanted you to see. And for the first time, Brittany cried not out of guilt, but out of grief. They talked for hours, about Jonathan, about the company, about the lies that shaped their lives. For the first time, there were no masks, no pretenses. Just two women trying to understand how their family had fallen apart. When Brittany left that night, she hugged Eleanor tightly. I'll help you, however I can, she whispered. Eleanor smiled faintly. Then let's make things right. 8 months later, the Gray family name was splashed across every newspaper in Boston. Gray real estate fraud case, former president found guilty. The trial had exposed everything, decades of deception, stolen inheritance, and manipulation. Walter was convicted of fraud and embezzlement. His age spared him from prison, but his reputation was ruined forever. Martha, complicit in the fraud, received a suspended sentence. Their once prestigious friends turned away. Half of the company's assets were legally restored to Eleanor. Now, standing in her glass-walled office overlooking Boston's skyline, Eleanor sipped her coffee. Her new nameplate read, Eleanor Gray, President CEO, Gray Real Estate Development. But the new company was different. She had transformed it, rebuilding it upon the principles her real father once believed in: integrity, sustainability, and fairness. Later that afternoon, a familiar face appeared in the lobby: Brittany. She looked tired but hopeful. "I was wondering," she said quietly, "if there's a place for me here." Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "There's a position in marketing. But this isn't family business anymore, it's professional." Brittany nodded. "Understood. Maybe that's how real family starts, when it's honest." That evening, Eleanor drove home through softly falling snow. When she stepped through her front door, her partner David and their adopted daughter, Lily, came running to greet her. "Mommy's home," Lily squealed, throwing her tiny arms around her neck. Eleanor lifted her up, smiling through tears. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy's home." David wrapped an arm around them both. "Long day?" Eleanor looked at the twinkling lights of their Christmas tree, the one she'd decorated herself this year. "A long day," she said, "but a good one." For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was outside looking in. She was home, truly home. Because family, she realized, wasn't about blood. It was about truth, love, and the people who choose you every single day. And Eleanor Gray had finally found hers.